What up, perps? King Copious back in effect. Purple State Party. You know what we're doing here? We're repping America, the center, and common sense, and keeping love in your heart. Man, I've been really sick for the last couple of days. I tried to film yesterday, couldn't even make it. Really looking forward to switching to a podcast, though, because having to shoot and edit these videos, whew, takes a lot out of the boy. But, you know, I'm the type that just grinds through stuff, man. If you're a fellow grinder, well, you know, this Fetty Cannon, it's for you. All right, we're going to kick this off. A little Babylon Bee here. Republican hipster says he wanted to annex Greenland way before Trump made it mainstream. Yeah, I'm not here to tell you that I was all for that. Guy who does my music asked me to weigh in on it, so I'm going to weigh in on it. It's an interesting topic because it seems sort of crazy. But then when you start putting some context around it, it starts making a little more sense. This came from a website called Quartz. You know, I don't use just the same websites. You know, I look for different information from different people, you know. It's the only way to come out purple, man, is to hear it from both sides. But this is from Quartz. I can't tell you where they lean. So, because, you know, the ice up in the Arctic is melting, shipping traffic has already increased by 37% over the last 10 years. And, you know, they're saying here, you know, taking the Northwest Passage takes 14 days from the key port of the UK to Vancouver, Canada, in comparison to 18 days via the Panama route. Yeah, the Panama route is another thing that, you know, I believe we need to secure. Apparently Mexico, I don't know how true this is. I just saw it kind of as I was skimming through social media this morning. Apparently, Mexico wants to build their own canal. That's kind of cool. It's going to kind of make it hard for people to immigrate north, though, isn't it? If they have to cross a canal. But, you know, they seem to manage coming up through Panama. But anyhow, so there is, you know, there is something to be said for keeping those shipping routes open. You know, what they went on to say here, control over Greenland means strategic control over newer routes driven by a silent force that Trump has time and again denied, climate change. You know, we have to pause here for a second because I'm kind of getting sick of hearing about this all the time. At one point, Los Angeles was a grassland, a jungle. We had mastodons. We had saber-toothed tigers living here. Same thing with the Sahara Desert. The planet wobbled, and they became deserts. Right now, we are seeing portions of the Sahara Desert becoming green again. Yes, there is climate change, but it's not man-made. It's what happens when you are a giant ball spinning through the universe and wobbling. Remember, our planet is so big that when we're celebrating Christmas time in the winter, Australia celebrates Christmas time in the summer. That's how big we are. I don't know how else to explain it. Yes, we are getting warmer. But the strategic value of Greenland extends far beyond shipping routes. The region holds vast deposits of rare earth minerals, crucial for renewable energy technology. And not only just green energy, but, you know, computers, things like that. Obviously, things are going to run more and more on batteries. That seems to be where we're going. I think it's an unstoppable force at this moment. I mean, everybody, you know, they love those little e-bikes. You know, you have your Bluetooth this and your wireless that, and those things require, you know, power storing batteries. You know, we're not going to get around it. We are moving towards an almost completely electrified society. I don't think it's, whatever. We're not going to get into that right now. But the problem is, China has already taken all of Africa. And China, keep in mind, China is an evil country that believes that deception is an honorable trait. To deceive your enemies is honorable. And you can debate that. Sometimes in war, yes, it is. But in society, I don't know. They are evil monsters. Yeah, people think, they're harmless, blah, blah, blah. No, they're not, okay? They steal their technology. They undercut people. They are not good people. They have slaves. More on that in a minute. But Do we need to buy Greenland? Well, I guess in some ways it would be nice if it was under our control. The Danes hold it right now, Denmark. I don't know what their agreements with China are, but we really don't need China sucking up more resources. You know, part of the problem that I have with green energy is that it all runs through China right now. And China is going to try to take over the world, whether militarily or financially. That is their end goal. That is their end goal. It's there. It's right there in black and white. So taking Greenland or having more control over Greenland really only makes sense. I know it seems weird for the United States to colonize or to expand our territories. But I think in the world economy that we see today, we have to. We have to keep pace with China. China has to look into Africa and look what China does over there. You know, they exploit child labor. They exploit slave labor. They are evil people. Greenland has lost massive amounts of ice, making it more attractive for rare earth mining and oil drilling, while we're already seeing more traffic through the Arctic as it becomes more ice-free for longer. See, that's the problem. As it becomes easier to mine, is China going to sweep in? Because we need to be there first. Now, I mean, hey, if Greenland wants to do it and signs contracts to, use U.S. distributors or U.S. Companies to do the drilling, that would be great. But purchasing it outright does kind of make sense. Plus, maybe we could do it for cheaper in Greenland because we won't be bogged down by all the damn regulations that we have here in the United States. I found this one hilarious. California Democrats reach $50 million deal to Trump-proof the state. These politicians, they're all the same, okay? They're all just slimy, backstabbing, do what you can to make yourself more powerful. So for them to, to do this performative thing of, we're gonna have a resistance against Trump. Okay, yeah, really. You know, maybe the problem is with Gavin and the one-party California is that you focus in on the wrong things. You focus in on what you think is important while denying what you know is important. That's the problem I have with what goes on here in California. I mean, when was our last reservoir? Sometime in the 70s? We need water. Water is crucial to life, and yet we don't make that a priority. We prioritize it for, the fish. We prioritize stopping developers from going out and bulldozing the Joshua trees, but they're bulldozing the Joshua trees right now to put up a solar plant. Because what they want seems, in their mind, what they want is the most important thing. And that's not the way it works. That's one of the things that, I want people to see is that are we focusing in on the important things? So as of today, TikTok is supposedly going to be banned. And I know a lot of people, they just think, it's just social media. It's just kids watching new dance videos and stupid cat videos and people cooking cakes that look like telephones. But social media is a drug. Okay, make no mistake about it. It is a drug. It has addictive properties. And a lot of times it's just useless. I'm not saying all of it is. I mean, there are lots of things. There's self-defense, gardening, cooking, exercising. There is plenty of positives to social media. I'm not bashing it as it should just be taken away. I'm not saying that at all. But it is a drug. And I think the Chinese have refined it. They have refined their algorithm to a point where it's the purest street drug. Excuse me. I'm soldiering through this cold, man. When you do drugs like I have in the past, you do look for the purest form. And TikTok seems to be the purest form of that dopamine-giving social media. They're really good at it. TikTok shutting down, and people are flocking to a thing called RedNote. RedNote is another Chinese social media app. It is primarily still in Chinese, in fact. A lot of the headers and things like that are still in Chinese. And when people go on there, they're met by, current users who explain to them how they talk about certain things to get around the Chinese censorship. And it's weird to me to think that, like, American and Western children are flocking to Chinese apps for their dopamine hits. But it's the purest form. That's what it is. And so what is it about TikTok that is so disturbing? Well, for me, I want to sum things up as quickly as possible. And I think this one stat really kind of shows that. Last year in 2024, if you looked up the Uyghurs, who are the Muslims who have been enslaved in China, you look them up on Instagram, 80% of the stories were negative towards China on the subject of the Uyghurs. On TikTok, it was only 11%. It's propaganda. It's helping spread the Chinese cause across the world. And that alone is why I think it should be. There are a lot of companies that come out of China that are, not allowed to be used in the United States because we know that they use it for spying. We're in a warm war with these guys, It used to be called a Cold War, but I think it's a little more of a warm war. They are trying to hack us. They are trying to mess with our elections. The Chinese are an evil group. And unfortunately, their system is one that if you're at the top right now, you could stay at the top. If you're at the bottom, you're never getting to the top. It's just not the way their system works. Their system is against everything that most of our youth believe in. But yet they flock to them purely because it is the purest form of dopamine. They know how to trap you with their algorithms. And it seems really insignificant, a social media app with dancing and music, right? But if we are going to allow China direct access to our children and the children of the world, that's a scary thing. We don't need their propaganda getting into our kids' heads. And, that's why I'm behind the either sell it or ban it, Speaking of disinformation, Biden saying goodbye. And he cries about the loss of fact checkers, Democrats were big into fact checkers, which were often just opinions. But, I think Joe Biden and his administration and the Democratic Party did the worst of all the disinformations. The Hunter Biden laptop. The FBI had confirmed that it was Hunter Biden's laptop, yet they went on social media and said that it was not his laptop, that it was created by the Russians. They censored people's posts talking about it. They censored people's posts not only about the laptop, they went on to censor people's discussions about COVID and about the election and anything else that they disagreed with. That's the part that just really, really gets me about this last administration that we had, was how much of the shit that they complained about that they themselves were doing. It's an administration that is going to be remembered as one of the worst. Think about it. The botched Afghan withdrawal that led to the deaths of our soldiers, Afghan citizens, our allies. We left billions of dollars of equipment behind. All because he was having a bad day and his aides kept him away from hearing the dissenting voices. He does this infrastructure bill that has produced 7 car chargers. And one of my pet, projects that I really was behind was the high-speed internet in rural America. And none of that got done because his diversity requirements kneecap the entire project. And then when Georgia passes an insignificant election law, he starts crying about Jim Crow. I mean, think about that. What kind of misinformation is that? Jim Crow laws were a really ugly period of American history. And it had nothing to do with what went on recently in Atlanta with their election laws. Requiring voters to show identification does not stop anybody, because there's no laws that stop anybody from getting identification. It's not like only white people can get identification. You know, he cried about a dictator or an oligarchy, but he wanted to ban cigarettes, gas stoves. He opened up our borders and allowed an entire new gang across our border that has been wreaking havoc. They are literally using homeless shelters as their basis of operations. They're taking over apartments. They have no regard for our laws, and they certainly have no regard for our punishments, because where they come from, people are put in prison and basically just left there for the rest of their lives, beaten all the time, tortured, used as slave labor. But he wants to say that what's coming in now is going to be worse. I don't see that. I don't see that at all. That's why, I hope Donald finishes the high-speed internet in rural America. I think that's really important. I've seen it firsthand what having good internet can do. Being able to connect to people, work remotely, things like that. You can't do that if you're on old dial-up. You can't really do that too well on Starlink. You need a nice hard line coming in. That's what she said. Well, as of right now, Hamas is releasing hostages as part of the ceasefire agreement. But, let's keep something in mind right here. This was just reported a few days ago. Hamas leader promises another October 7th attack despite ceasefire negotiations. Hamas leader Khalil al-Halla allegedly promised another October 7th style attack during a press conference Wednesday, just after the tentative ceasefire was announced, according to multiple reports. And this comes from PragerU. This really sums it up. Hamas, we want a ceasefire. Israel, I thought you wanted to kill us all and take over our land. Hamas, we do want to kill you and take our land. Israel, but I thought you wanted a ceasefire. Hamas, correct. We want to kill all of you and take all of your land, but we also want you to stop fighting back. That's what it is. Look, I see one benefit to the ceasefire right now, okay? Hamas is never going to keep their end of the bargain. So eventually Israel's going to have to deal with them again. But possibly this pause in the conflict might allow Israel to go after the financiers of the entire thing, which is Iran. So let's hope so, all right? Another thing that's ongoing right now, the Moss Landing lithium battery storage has been on fire now. This is a place that's had fires, I believe, 21, 22, 23, now 25. It's just insane. This is one of the largest lithium battery storage facilities, and it's releasing a large plume of toxic smoke into the air. There's a green energy. 1,200 people were ordered to evacuate their homes as a section of the Moss Landing power plant burned overnight. The plant is about 18 miles northeast of the city of Monterey. People are scared of nuclear energy, and nuclear energy has had less issues than lithium storage batteries, and lithium storage batteries have not been around that long. This is mind-boggling to me. This is where the agenda is what's the problem. Everybody wants to switch to pure electrification, okay? We're going to get all of our electricity from the wind and the sun. Now, I understand that, there's going to be bumpy roads to get started. I'm not saying that green energy has to come out the gate 100% perfect. But this place has had multiple fires, and we've had multiple fires in other facilities. It's ridiculous. And they keep doing it. Like this one guy right here was talking about church. He compared the fire to the partial nuclear meltdown at 3 Mile Island in 1979. Yeah, 1979. The last time California finished a reservoir and the last time we had a problem with a nuclear reactor in America. If renewable energy is going to be the future, it really needs to rest in safe energy. A fire suppression system that is part of every battery rack at the plant failed to keep up with the fire. It was overridden, and that led to the fire overtaking the system and eventually overtaking the entire building. You have sprinklers that go along each rack. It's really, I do a lot of warehouses that store a lot of these lithium batteries. Not big, like storing power for city batteries, but batteries for different devices. Solar for your homes, e-scooters and things like that. And there's a decidedly lack of fire suppression around these things. We're going to talk about this a little bit, but I'm going to bring it up right now. In California, fire codes are grandfathered. So if when the building was built, everything was legal, it's still legal today. Unless you fundamentally change what you're doing with the building. For example, I helped get a razor blade factory turned into a nightclub. One of the things we had to do is we had to add sprinklers to certain sections, and we had to upgrade certain things because it went from a warehouse to a place where the public was coming and hanging out. But for the most part, it's grandfathered. I see it all the time. I see giant warehouses where there's one little bell outside, and that's the entire alert for the system. Nobody's going to hear it inside, and nobody changes it. Nobody forces those changes. A little bit more on that in a bit. But the problem is that our water systems that we use in our sprinkler systems does not work very well against a battery. Water can actually make it worse. So what are we doing? Are we going to do halon? Because halon burned a hole in the ozone. We have cleaner stuff, but my suspicion is that the clean agents that we use now probably have some other toxicity that we haven't really fully admitted to or discovered yet. So I don't know how this is going to work where we're storing all of our solar energy in batteries. I don't think this is a problem that could be overcome. I don't know. We'll see. But right now, green energy, again, not looking very green when you're pumping all kinds of just toxic chemicals into the air. If California can suspend permitting rules after wildfires, it can abolish them. This comes from the libertarianish Reason magazine. So, California Governor Newsom has this week issued an executive order to spare victims of the LA wildfires from erroneous government permitting and review requirements as they rebuild their homes and lives. Specifically, he's putting on hold the cumbersome rules required by the California Environmental Quality Act and the Coastal Act. That's smart policies. Smart politics and good policies. But why not take this approach further? Like he said, when the fires are extinguished, victims who have lost their homes and businesses must be able to rebuild quickly and without roadblocks. Roadblocks? His order will help cut permitting delays, an important first step in allowing our communities to recover faster and stronger. Newsom also said he ordered state agencies to identify additional ways to streamline the rebuilding and recovery process. Wow. Isn't that nice of him? He's going to suspend those rules. Newsom hasn't suddenly gotten the free market religion, of course. In a subsequent post, he said, we're also extending key price gouging protections to help make rebuilding more affordable. Okay, but price gouging, allowing prices to rise to reflect their scarcity, actually speeds up the rebuilding process as contractors rush to the scene in hopes of securing lucrative work. The rush of new contractors creates competition and brings prices back to earth. Maybe that level of market thinking is too out there for Newsom, but we'll take progress wherever we can get it. The CEQA, signed by Governor Ronald Reagan in 1970, remains an enormous hindrance to building anything in California, as it allows any stakeholder to file a lawsuit challenging the process. It requires voluminous environmental impact reports. Often project opponents are labor unions seeking higher wages. In other words, boost wages and we'll drop the lawsuit. Or neighbors who don't want extra traffic. So, in other words, they have allowed these people, given these people the tools to stop just about any project. These lawsuits add costs, reduce the size of projects, or even just stop new development. Yet lawmakers have been loath to take on environmental interests in reform, except on an ad hoc basis. For example, when they wanted to build a new stadium for the Sacramento Kings, they waived them. When they wanted to build a new stadium for the 49ers, they waived them. Keeping sports teams, this is from Reason Magazine again, keeping sports teams in town isn't the definition of an emergency. But that example shows lawmakers could certainly pare back the CEQA's requirements when they have proper motivation. Likewise, California legislatures have chipped away at it as part of their admirable but insufficient efforts to spark multifamily housing constructed by creating a streamlined permitting process. The latest major housing law, Senate Bill 423, even applies exemptions in the coastal zone. Newsom signed it over the objections of beachfront perseverance. There's that word again. Remember last week you saw the blooper. Oh, I can't say that word. Preservationists. Preservationist? I don't know, man. Dude, I'm sick. I'm just trying my best here, folks. In Marin County lawsuit last year, the state appeals court called the CEQA a formidable tool of obstruction and declared that CQA is not meant to create paralysis. But paralysis through analysis is exactly what it does. Meanwhile, the Coastal Act, which was created by Prop 20 in 1972, gives the California Coastal Commission near dictatorial power to approve or deny development as far as 5 miles inland from the state's 840-mile coastline. The commission has long been the state's ultimate no-growth agency. In 2022, it even killed a proposed desalination project on the site of a decommissioned energy plant at Huntington Beach because of concerns over microscopic plankton. Even a drought didn't dissuade commissioners from approving that needed water project. The unanimous rejection was a culmination of years-long regulatory, political, and legal battle. I mean, I understand that we need to have rules. We can't just have willy-nilly shit going on. But, the rules that have been placed in California and other places, laws that allow anyone to sue, should be abolished. They do it in Texas with abortion. We do it here for disability and the environment. And it's been weaponized by NIMBYs, Karens, and slimy lawyers. They destroy businesses. They delay or even stop development. Like I said earlier, in fire codes, there's a thing called grandfathering. If it was legal then, it's legal now. And that's what's wrecking California businesses, because anybody could go in and say, oh, you don't have a wheelchair ramp. Sue them. The lawyer makes some money. The business goes out of business because they can't afford to put the ramp in. But the ramp was not required when that building was built. Now, if you remodel, sure, now you have to add a ramp. If you tear down the building and build a new building, sure, you have to put in a ramp. It's the same thing with these environmental laws that we have. You know, my family owns property, and we've been delayed because the locals don't want us in there. So they keep saying, oh, you need this study. Okay, well, you did that study, now you need this study. It makes it so, it eats up so much time and money. And it's purely been weaponized. What are the rules? Do we meet the rules? Yes. Okay, you may proceed. It should be that simple. But it's not. If there's a complaint, fine. Let the government agency in charge of it look into it. If there's a need, it can be addressed during the permit process. Like I said, you're building a new building, you need to put in ADA compliant stuff, right? How are we going to build lower cost housing if anybody can stop it? And that's what we see. We see areas that have space to build low cost housing, but they block it. They don't want it in their neighborhood. NIMBYs. Get out of it, not in my backyard. Right? And they use these laws. They use these laws like a weapon. How do we build, I always mention reservoirs. How do we build reservoirs if every nutcase can just endlessly sue? Endlessly sue. Oh, well, what about this? Well, what about that? Well, what about this? They can delay it at no cost to themselves. These laws need to change. This is the stupidest thing we've ever done in America. Allowing stakeholders to sue. This is ridiculous. All right, so Just a quick bit here. Whoopi Goldberg blames the winds for deadly LA fires. It's nobody's fault. Whoopi Goldberg wants people to stop pointing fingers and assigning blame. All right. I agree with her. I don't usually agree with Whoopi Goldberg. It was the winds, okay? I don't know if any of our changes would have made much of a difference, but our flaws were laid bare. What are we going to do about it? Are we going to increase water storage? Are we going to divert more water down here? Are we going to look into why hydrants failed? Are we going to get more serious about brush clearance? Yeah, here's Gavin Newsom, Bronco, Make America California, Newsom 2028, and he's standing in front of a burnt-out forest. That's what it is. All of these rules and regulations have led us the wrong way historically. Back in time, we used to lose about 4.5 million acres every year to fires. Then we started allowing timber companies to come in and clear out dead and overcrowded trees. And they would pay us, the state, for that timber. We used herbicides to keep growth at bay so it didn't, it just grow all the way down, right down to the homes. We could spray stuff. Yes. Hey, look, I understand that spraying stuff like Roundup and crap like that is not great, but there are ways around it. You could dig it up and pave it. I know that's not too sexy, but you could do that. But anyhow, through all the efforts that we used to do, we got it down to about 250,000 acres a year. Guess where it's at now? It's right back to 4.5 million acres. You know why? Because fire is what Mother Nature uses for cleaning. You overcrowd the forest, eventually you're going to have a fire. It'll come lightning, just odd reflections, and good old mankind. Somehow that fire is going to start. Remember, fire is a natural process, folks. If you allow Mother Nature to take care of herself, this is how she's going to cleanse it. She's going to burn it down. And our biggest fire hazard here, the Coastal Commission. Yeah, the Coastal Commission. Because they don't allow for proper brush clearance. They don't allow for things to be done to fireproof the area because the environment. See, you sit there and you say you're protecting the environment, and then the whole fucking thing burns down. Gavin Newsom cuts firefighting budget while pouring billions of dollars into his Don Quixote green ventures. Yes, like the fucking train that nobody needs. See, this is an example. I'm not blaming him, okay? Because had he done other things with the money other than the bullet train, I still think the fires would have been just as devastating. Okay? I think it's possible that we could start mitigating those things, but he's got to stop wasting money on shit that we don't need. We need water. We need fireproofing. Those are pretty important things that we need. This whole idea that California is going to save the planet by going electric is just false. It's patently false. It'll never happen. Experts say when you factor in hidden costs of intermittent wind power, Trump is right about costs. President-elect Donald Trump caused quite a stir this week with his comments about the wind industry. He compared wind farms to dropping garbage in a field and said wind developers are getting rich off of government subsidies that the projects receive. He argued that it's the most expensive form of energy, far more expensive than clean natural gas. Experts doing full cost analysis of all costs associated with putting wind and solar farms on the grid just told the news that Trump is correct. Yeah. The New York Times, of course, said that the press conference was meandering. Yeah, right. So, the Times reporter stressed that wind accounted for 22% of the electricity in Texas and 59% in Iowa. And they also claimed it was the lowest cost, but it's not. The Times article did not discuss why the wind industry needs so much ongoing federal taxpayer support, a point that Trump stressed. If it's producing much more cost-competitive electricity, why does it need to be propped up? Well, because the reality of it is that onshore wind costs about $240 per megawatt hour, solar costs $357 per megawatt hour, and offshore wind costs $436 per megawatt hour. That's compared to $98 per megawatt hour for natural gas, or $37 per megawatt hour for gas peaker plants. And those are the natural gas power plants that are turned on when demand exceeds supply. The average home in the Northeast uses about 8 megawatts of electricity per year. A lot of numbers. I'm not great with numbers. But it's expensive. And it comes with inherent problems. We've had windmills that have collapsed out in the ocean. We have to de-ice these things. And they use chemicals to do that, folks. And if the wind isn't blowing, you don't get anything out of them. Yeah. All right, I got to wrap this up here. But I found this one really funny. Leftist Theater opens its doors for homeless migrants to beat the cold, only to find out leaving wasn't in their plan. This Paris theater could go bankrupt after 250 migrant youths took it over following a December event promoting tolerance of migrants. Yeah, because these people come from areas that the fight for survival is so real that when they come to places like Paris, they just naturally are going to take advantage. And that's exactly what happened. They allowed these 250 people inside, and now they're refusing to leave. One of them, a 16-year-old Congolese migrant, said, "We are here to claim our right to housing, health, and education." Well, fine, in the Congo. Well, I don't understand this whole idea that because we've decided that humans have the right to housing, health, and education, that whatever country you land in should provide that for you. I don't think that's a really good way of doing it. I have a feeling that that's more along the lines going to drag countries down and not promote countries up. I don't know. But it just shows you that, sadly, a lot of the migrants who have come to Europe and the United States are just going to take advantage of the situation. It's a sad fact. I don't like having to say it, but that's what it is. They're demanding their rights. They are not leaving this theater. They don't care that the theater will close. They will then claim squatters' rights. The French government will allow them to stay, and eventually, more than likely, they'll probably burn it down. You know, one of the things that I always say I stand for here is common sense. And, you know, when I see stuff that goes against common sense, that's when I know it's wrong. It's really quite that simple. Biden administration cuts failing EV company a fat check on its way out the door. The Biden administration cut a multi-billion-dollar check for struggling electric vehicle maker Rivian Thursday, just days before President-elect Donald Trump's inauguration. Okay, so we have bailed out U.S. automakers before. Okay? But there's a big difference in this story. Let's look at that big difference. Rivian lost nearly $40,000 per vehicle in the third quarter of 2024 and hasn't turned a profit in a single quarter since it was founded in 2009. So it didn't even turn a profit for any chunk of 3 months. It never had a 3-month spurt where it made a profit. So Rivian has been around now for what? 16 years and has never turned a profit? And we're going to prop it up to the tunes of billions? What was that number again? It was something like $6 billion that they gave them. Does that make any sense to you? If nobody wants the product, okay? If nobody wants the product, then what in the hell is the purpose? Nobody wants it. I believe it or not, just the other day, I saw 3 of them in a parking lot. It was a place that makes electric boats. I don't know. So they have electric boats, so I guess electric trucks does make sense. Ugly fucking cars. I mean, they basically look like a truck except for the front end, and the front end just looks derpy as hell. But they haven't made a profit in a single quarter in 16 years. This shows you how These people are putting their agenda first. The thing about Purple State is I have an agenda, like I say in the beginning, America, the center, common sense. Like, let's run a government like a successful business, not like a bunch of fucking spoiled little children just arguing to get their way. And when they do get their way, they regret it, but then they go on to say, no, it's still the greatest thing ever. This is bullshit what's going on here. We are in real danger of toppling our empire because we are allowing people to put their agenda ahead of needs. And this story right here about Rivian completely shows that. This is not a company that has been doing well or was turning a profit, a little downturn, blah, 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 blah. They have never been successful. Them, like wind energy and a lot of these highfalutin green ideas, are being propped up by taxpayer dollars. A lot of the jobs that are being created are being propped up by taxpayer dollars. Look at California. Gavin Newsom, in his short amount of time there, less than a decade, and he's doubled the size of government. This is not the way to run a successful business. Therefore, it is not the way to run a successful country. Hey, I'm your future CEO, Kid Copious. I'm Purple State Party. And so are you. Love one another. And please, just keep loving your heart. And, you know, when you're feeling blue and you're feeling sick, always remember, it's always best to just dance it out.